welcome back to Mondays Down South. Just Sai and I again for 2 weeks in a row, unfortunately. So we figured we'd shake it up. It's obviously a bummer just having the two of us for 2 straight weeks. So we went with the logo background. We were both playing around with it. So for better or for worse, here it is. I don't know. It's kind of fun. What's up, Sai?
What's up, man? I mean, I feel like it was about time we finally embraced it. I don't know how it took us a year to kind of get on this train, but glad we finally did. Can I tee this segment off by pointing to my hat and making a big shout out to Spencer Rattler and his fellow tight end joining my Gamecocks this upcoming, I guess, spring, I'll say, is when they start practicing. But boy, am I riled up. I'm sorry. I had to say something about that to start this segment because it's huge. I mean, we have not been a team that has been able to get a player like that in a long time since we had Spurrier. I think Jadeveon Clowney and maybe Marcus Lattimore are the closest things I could say to that. And I mean, granted, those two were incredible when we got them, but that was when we had Spurrier, and this was almost a decade ago. And I think just the fact that Beamer, in his first year of actually being on a recruiting cycle, not only has recruited very well in the sense of players coming out of high school, but also in the sense of getting legitimately a guy that was considered to be a Heisman candidate coming into this year. As a matter of fact, I think he was the favorite coming into this year. It didn't work out, but to get him to transfer, I think, is a huge statement for the university. So I just really wanted to take a second to say that, because between him and getting the tight end, I'm sorry, I always forget the tight end's name because I tend to get it mixed up, but he was an all Big 12 tight end. So it's no small deal, and I'm super duper excited to see what the Gamecocks do this upcoming fall with that, and also just to kind of see what we do with recruiting going forward. I'm very excited for Beamer, and I also kind of want to tee that up to get your thoughts on that, but also that Clemson's defensive coordinator, Venables, who was actually originally a part of the Oklahoma coaching staff back when I think that Stoops, is coming back to Oklahoma to be their head coach. And people have been trying to pry Venables away for a while from Dabo now, because he's been a terrific defensive coordinator over at Clemson, great recruiter, great coach in the sense of coaching defenses. Going over there to Oklahoma, I personally think that was a great hire on Oklahoma's front, and it seems to make perfect sense. But I also wanted to kick that over to you, Ev, to kind of get your thoughts on that before we get into the NFL.
No doubt, man. Certainly, congrats are in order. That's obviously a massive get for you guys. I mean, even past preseason, 4 or 5 games in, I think he was still the Heisman favorite. So, hopefully the second half of that year is just kind of a fluke, and maybe, I don't know, whatever it was, maybe Lincoln knew he was potentially on his way out. Maybe there was a rift. Who knows? But it seems like it'll be a good fit. I'm excited for you guys getting the tight end as well. And it's a good point. I mean, everyone's like recruiting, but transfer portal is a huge part of that. I think getting transfers says just as much about, your program that you're building, the school as a whole, and, the kind of, players being attracted to that. So definitely huge in terms of Oklahoma. Whoever got that job, I think they'll still do well. It's such a big program. It's interesting for them to go to the defensive side. Given that they've traditionally been an offensive powerhouse, but I think they'll be fine. Certainly a great hire. Clemson, obviously losing the OC and the DC this year. I think they just actually recently promoted guys in-house to take over those roles. So certainly a big shakeup. It's interesting. I was kind of joking once I heard that. I was like, man, if you get the OC or DC job at Bama, Georgia, Clemson, like those big programs, it's just a lock you're going to get a solid coaching job in the near future. Like that's the ultimate, setup opportunity for that. So a lot of shakeup in some of these big programs with their coaching staffs. So I'll have to see, but I think it'll be a good hire for them. And obviously, like I said, whoever they got, I think it's Oklahoma. I think they're gonna be able to do pretty well. Although now they're going to the SEC, so not so fast. Maybe we'll have to see, but.
Well, that's kind of why I think they went Venables, because I think he's proven that he can, take on the top of the top from the SEC and from a defensive standpoint, and hang in there and win. Like, I mean, they've beaten Bama twice now with his coach defenses, and he's done a terrific job of coaching that defense up. So maybe that's why Oklahoma went that route, because I don't know, we were under the suspicion that maybe Lincoln Riley left Oklahoma because he didn't want to coach in the SEC, and I think Venables has proven that he could potentially have success in the SEC. And maybe they realized, okay, we can't just be a program that tries to put up 50 and can't play defense. We got to be a program that's a little more well-rounded, because they've been to the college football playoffs on multiple occasions, but have never really been able to make any noise once they got there, because often their offense would put up points, but their defense couldn't stop anybody. So very excited to see what happens with Venables, and just excited to have Oklahoma in the SEC. I'm really curious to see how that translates. Not as much excited for Texas, but we gotta take who we can get, I guess. With that being said, we can move on. You got any other topics you want to discuss before we get to NFL?
On college football, just something funny. Obviously, everyone's been making fun of Brian Kelly for, first off, how he adopted a Southern accent in like his first appearance with LSU. Did you see the like little hype video they posted of their, I guess it was Brian Kelly and their like big quarterback recruit, I guess. They posted a little hype video of the two of them. I can't even explain it. It's just the most cringeworthy thing of like them standing back to back and like dancing, and like Brian Kelly's almost doing one of these little dances. Like, I'm just recommending that if you haven't seen it, go check it out on, I think it was LSU's Twitter. Like, it will make you cringe like no other. And for any people that aren't big Brian Kelly fans, you'll greatly appreciate it. So I thought that was funny. I'll shout out, if you need a college football fix, because we're not quite at the bowl season, Friday night 9:15, JMU North Dakota State in the Fargo Dome, going to be a barn burner. We need to even the score there at 2-2 over the last 5 years. Two best teams left, as the number one seed got knocked out last week. So should be a good one if you need a good college football game to watch before the bowl season kicks off. But I think that's I guess that's it. No.
First and foremost, best of luck to your Dukes.
Thank you,
sir. Out the win, whether they win or lose. I'll be there in New York City after the game to either celebrate.
I'll come with you to celebrate, or
one of the two. Looking forward to it, and you'll be there when my Colts come back around on Saturday.
Huge game.
The Patriots in a big divisional matchup, so that might tee up the NFL in a very perfect way, huh? So I guess we could probably jump into that. Do you have any games right off the bat you want to discuss? You want to start with the football team?
That was probably the biggest game, and most of the games flopped this weekend, at least in the 1 o'clock slate. I guess the 4 o'clock slate was great, but the 1 o'clock slate was awful. Football team just came out completely flat. Awful first half. Probably, honestly, the worst half of football they've played all year. The Cowboys defensive line, though, savage defensive line. Micah Parsons is, fringe defensive player of the year at this point. Certainly rookie of the year. So first half, just you can't play much worse. Give Dallas's defensive line credit for getting a pick six, a couple other turnovers to set up easy scores. And then the Cowboys did what the Cowboys always do, and they did everything in their power to blow the game, including I had actually I was out in Raleigh watching the game, blah, blah, blah. We had left 3 minutes left, 2-score game. It's like, all right, I got places to get to. And as I left, like the first play after that, Cole Holcomb gets the pick six. And honestly, if DeAndre Carter, they get the 3 and out, they get the ball back. If DeAndre Carter catches that ball down the sideline, Washington could have won that game for how awful they played. So, Dallas won. They delivered on Mike McCarthy's guarantee. Give them credit. Defensive line, a defensive line like they have, that they look like they have right now, can really wreck a game is the biggest thing. That's what we're trying to build. And if they have that, then, they can make some noise, but the offense does not look good right now for them. Dak specifically looks awful lately. He did not play well at all on Sunday. They ran the ball okay, even with Zeke, being injured and Pollard being out, but, give them credit. They went on the road. Again, it's classic Cowboys. They look like they're going to blow you out, and then they do everything in their power to choke it, and they did hold on in the end. But
yeah, they let their foot off the gas pedal in the second half because they had such a big lead. Happens to a lot of teams where they'll get ahead and then not game plan to be ahead by a lot, and then a team will make it way too close for comfort. We saw it pretty similarly actually with the Vikings Steelers in the Thursday night game, where the Vikings had that game locked up. And again, they did everything they could almost in a very similar way to give a Steelers shit. And the Steelers almost won that game, which is crazy. Like, they almost came back and scored and won that game in a game where I think the Vikings were up like 28-0 or something like that. It was crazy.
Yeah, 20-29, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know we'll get into that. But the other thing that I want to say is
I'm not worried about Dak because I personally think that he played really well against the Saints the week before. And even in the 2 weeks before that, when he was playing without his top two receivers, Gallup had just gotten back and Cedric Wilson was playing, he still had some pretty solid games in the sense of putting up points on the offensive front. This was one of his roughest, especially in the second half. I think one thing that I've noticed with Dak is if he doesn't have a run game, though, that's when I worry a little bit more about him. And with Pollard being out and Zeke playing at not even, I would argue that Zeke at this point is playing at less than 50%. I don't understand why. I mean, he got less carries than, I can't remember.
Corey Clement.
Yeah, he got less carries than him. So
it was mainly second half, like you said, though. When they were blowing us out, they went to Clement. So Zeke.
Well, that's part of why I'm concerned, right? Because I think if they had a better run game, then I think maybe they could have.
They ran the ball well, though. I mean, not amazing, but they almost had 4 yards a carry on a lot of volume, so they didn't run the ball bad.
But I think you feel more comfortable running with more consistency if you have both you guys at a more healthy case. I just think that's probably their biggest concern right now in offense, because I'm not as worried about if they can establish the run. I'm not worried about Dak getting his 3 studs of receivers and even a fourth guy who's pretty solid as a fourth receiver the ball. Like, they've all been playing pretty well. Like, my main thing being, I'm not as worried about Dak. I just think they need to be able to establish a run on offense for them to really have success, because play action's so big for what they do. And I personally think that offense was always, even though they got all these stud receivers, the offense always was predicated on the offensive line and running the football before they built this offense. I still think Dallas looks good. I think the second half was not good. They, like you said, they worked a little too hard to help you guys get back in that game, because that was an absolute blowout. I mean, it was, I would almost say, similar to your game with the Seahawks, where it was like, you said you had control essentially the whole time, and then you just did some dumb stuff and kind of let them back in. And I think Cowboys did the same thing. Not super worried about them. I think they'll be fine. I think they got the division locked up at this point with the 3-game lead.
That's the biggest thing about this win, is they can now probably rest Zeke. It got a little dicey there when there was rumors they were thinking about it. Now they probably can, maybe lay off him a little bit. It's not complete. Well, plus they do want to play for seeding, but they're not going to get a bye at this point. There's only one bye, so you probably lay off Zeke. But although they want to be at home, well, see, the interesting thing is that the Cowboys are better on the road than they are at home this year. Like, all their awful losses have come at home, like that Denver game, the Raiders game. So I don't know.
I think if they get Pollard, they get Pollard back, then you can rest Zeke. But if they don't get Pollard back, then it's gonna be tough for them. It's gonna be really hard to say, okay, let's just I think they might do it the last week of the season, but I don't think they're gonna do it the rest of the season. Or maybe the last 2 weeks. I don't know. It just really depends on how the rest of the year plays out. But at the same time, football team still got a chance to bounce back, obviously, because you guys got the Eagles twice in the next couple weeks, and it's basically down to y'all, the Eagles, the Vikings, and maybe the Saints are probably the 4 that are most likely for that last spot. Because it seems. Are
you assuming the Niners lock up the 6? You're saying?
I'm not assuming, but it seems like a really good shot that 6th or 7th. It seems like the Niners are probably going to get in. So
yeah, Saints and even Atlanta records wise have a chance, but yeah, the COVID though. I mean, like now, I guess with the new variant, it's like the COVID issues across the league are so bad. So like we had right before the Cowboys game, we lost our other 2 defensive ends. So we were like, our top 4 defensive ends were all out. And then this week, John Allen, now obviously most of these guys are vaccinated and can still play, but like John Allen's on the COVID list now. Kendall Fuller's on the COVID list now. You got other teams, like I know Beckham, the Browns have like 8 guys. Like it's getting to that point where anything can happen. So but yeah,
the Colts had a bye week this week.
Yeah.
Last week I was complaining.
Get away from each other. No practice. Just stay away from each other.
Go eat what you want to eat and chill for a little bit. Because like it's like we were talking about last week. I was like, I hate this late season bye, but in a way it kind of worked out well. Not that it's gonna make a difference in that way, but I see what you're saying though. But the playoff picture is still pretty wide open in the NFC in terms of that later wild card spot. But it looks like the divisions are looking pretty solid on that end. I mean, I don't think the Rams will try. We can talk about that game. I don't know that the Rams they could, but I doubt they catch Arizona unless Arizona loses like 2 to 3 of the next of the remainder of the schedule. Because
what's head? Yeah, Division record, yeah, they would need to pass them because I think division record's the second tiebreaker because they've split. So they would need to get 2 on them. But Cardinals have, Colts, Cowboys, Seattle, all losable games, I guess. But yeah, I mean, the Rams, they didn't necessarily need it per se, but if they wanted a chance at the division, they needed it. And they did almost need it from a momentum perspective, like coming in really not playing well. So to get a big win is huge. Now, there's that little bit of doubt in the Cardinals now. They start to slumber a little bit here. I mean, James Conner came up with an injury. No word yet on the MRI, but we'll have to see. Good for the Rams, though, going in there, get it done. Although, then they wake up Monday morning and have a bunch of guys come off to the COVID list, including Odell. But
yeah, fingers crossed they can get those negative tests and get back that next week, because I hate to see, especially like big time competitive teams and teams that are competing for playoffs be in that position, because the last thing you want is because of COVID, but you got to do what you got to do to get the dub. But Rams look good, man. They look good. They beat the Cardinals. It was a close game, but it was, after the Cardinals beat them earlier in the year, they needed to kind of make that statement to prove that, they're still a force to be reckoned with in the NFC. And after that game, that's some restored faith in them, because if you look at previous weeks, I think last week they obviously trounced the Jaguars, but you expect that. But a few weeks before that, I think there was a lot of concern because, they played good teams, but they weren't really keeping it very close. So I'm very excited to see that they're back in it, and I could very much, if they get hot, if they could go win the Super Bowl. So that they have that kind of talent, and really good to see Odell Beckham Jr. balling again. And I think this goes to prove the dysfunction of Baker Mayfield and the Browns and Odell in a little way. I'm not saying.
I mean, he had one game, but.
What do you mean? He's at 4 straight games of touchdowns, right?
The other games he just had a couple catches, though, I think.
Yeah, but even then, you got he was only on the field for, I think, 30% of the snaps for his first
early
couple.
On, yeah.
Like, that's about as good as you can do in that time frame. Odell's still Odell. I mean, he's not as good as he was on the Giants, but he's still very much one of the best second receiver options in the NFL. And you could make an argument could be a one on specific teams. So really excited to see him back. Any additional thoughts on that game?
No, Van Jefferson too has been playing really well, so he adds another weapon there. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it happens as we move along. We know the Rams have the talent to match up with the Packers, Bucks. Obviously, the Cardinals, they just beat them on the road, so we'll have to see. But I guess move along here. Stick with the 1 o'clocks. Nothing too exciting, but a big win for the Browns, although they did it by knocking out Lamar Jackson earlier in the game, and almost blew it at the end. But that keeps them alive in the hunt. Speaking of Hunt, no pun intended, it looks like Kareem Hunt is out now for some amount of time that I have no idea. The other big news is Derrick Henry. His season is not over after all.
Crazy.
And all of a sudden, if the Titans get it rolling, I don't know what the deal is with the wide receivers, but I think they're expected to get them back at some point.
Julio's back. He played this weekend.
Right. And then AJB is obviously the big one, but they could all of a sudden get it rolling. I think it's looking like maybe to start the playoffs, they'll get Derrick Henry back, not before. All of a sudden, and they could be in favorable, playing conditions, being at home, given that where they're standing now, if they can hold on to that. If they get Derrick Henry back, maybe we slept on the Titans a little too soon, thinking that he was done, obviously. But, they could get it rolling again.
Yeah. Their defense played well against the Jaguars. I don't know what that means, but still, getting Derrick Henry back obviously completely changes the complexion of that team. The question is, will they get Derrick Henry back that we know, or will they get Derrick Henry back that rush back to try to provide help in the playoffs? Because we don't know, right? Because it's a pretty major injury for him to come back. I genuinely thought that he wouldn't play the rest of the season and take the time and come back next year and be that guy that we know to be just unstoppable as a force in the NFL. And we'll see. I mean, if he's coming back, I'm sure he's got something left in the tank, and 70% of Derrick Henry is better than most. So I can't, it changes the complexion of that team. Granted, I'll give Deontay Foreman and company a shout out, because I find that even with Henry out, they've found a way to keep running the ball at a decent pace and provide some support to Ryan Tannehill. But yeah, no, I mean, if Henry comes back and they keep the division, it's not going to be they're not going to be a team that people are excited to play in the playoffs because they'll beat you up and bruise you. So see what happens with that. I don't know though. I'm not going to get ahead of myself because the reports.
Tannehill needs to play.
But
he needs to play.
we'll have to see. We'll have to see like what he looks like when it go closer to that tape. So
yeah. Otherwise, the Raiders decided to have a little pregame huddle on top of the Chiefs logo, and then proceeded to allow almost 50 points and give up 35 by halftime. And the Chiefs, I know we're going to come on here and say the Chiefs are back. Their offense is also back. But again, this was the same team that they had their other offensive outburst against. So I think they just might have the Raiders number. I don't know, but the defense specifically continues to dominate. And like we mentioned last week, if the offense gets back to what, the typical Chiefs offense, then, with the defense they've all of a sudden developed, that is a problem for everyone, not just the AFC, but
they're just finding a way to win, man. It might not be impressive always. This week was, but they're finding a way to win, and that's, I can't fault them for that. That's all I can say. They're finding a way to win, and like you said, if that offense kicks into the gear, this Thursday night's gonna be huge because if they lose that game, the Chargers take the division lead. So this is gonna be a prove it moment because if they win this one, then I'm 100. I don't care if they win by 1 point. Then I'm 100% saying that they are a force to be reckoned with in the AFC because they're finding a way to beat the good teams. That's really all that matters, right? Like, so I'm curious to see what happens with that game, but still, nonetheless, 48-9. I don't care who you're playing. That's an extremely impressive victory.
Chargers are playing well too. So like you said, it's going to be a heck of a game, and not too much to add on the Chiefs. Obviously, it's just a blowout from the beginning, but I did laugh at the Raiders trying to make a statement with their little pregame huddle on the logo, and then you just go out and get embarrassed. So that was probably a mistake, but I guess the only other, the Green Bay game, I didn't actually watch it. I had an early flight the next morning, but I was kind of loosely following the score. I was like, that was wild. The Bears scoring on special teams and some big plays. And then Aaron, he's got a broken toe, but he sure doesn't look like it. He's just been tearing it up. Devontae Adams, 2 scores. Now with the Cardinals losing, I think it's definitely Green Bay at the top of my pecking order, if not already before.
That's one thing that I will, like, not to toot my own horn, but I will give myself credit for that because I've been saying, I don't know, since like week 3 or 4, I was like, I understand the Cardinals and all these teams have a more complete team and better records, but there's just something about Green Bay this year that really stands out to me in the sense of when you watch them play, and that has held true like ever since. As a matter of fact, it's probably even amplified because even when they've been hurt or even when they've had COVID issues or even when Aaron Rodgers is playing with a broken toe or whatever it is, they're finding a way to just win, and not just win, but win decisively against teams. So really impressed with Green Bay. And man, what the Bears, this guy comes into your stadium and tells you he still owns you. And then he comes and owns you again. Like, you guys got to respond better. I understand it's Aaron Rodgers, but come on, guys. You let up 350 yards and 4 TDs. You're putting up Hall of Fame numbers on you per usual. That's got to suck to be a Bears fan and watch Rodgers play against you.
There's only so much the Bears can do, But speaking of the NFC, though, the other big game, obviously the Bucks taken to overtime by the Bills. Kind of almost had that game in control, and then the Bills came back late. Because again, that was kind of a desperation game for the Bills, despite the fact that it was a brutally difficult game to go on the road and play the Bucks. But they're all of a sudden, I guess they still have the 7, but they are really close to falling out of the wild card race. And Josh brought them back, but the Bucks, again, they needed overtime, but they're starting to round into form here a little bit with a nice win over a desperate Bills team, who hopefully can pick it back up and give us another AFC contender to watch. But that was a heck of a game.
I would consider that picking it back up. If you go on the road and play the Buccaneers and take them into overtime, you tie the game at the end, you take them into overtime. That's a darn good game on their end because that's you don't expect them to win that, but they almost did. So I can't fault them for that. They still look like a team that, here's the thing. I understand my Colts, tronched the Bills a few weeks ago, but I'm not excited about the notion of playing the Buffalo Bills as a wild card team if I'm a division champ, because that's a team that can go beat anybody. They have that talent with Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, and just being able to maybe not be so good on the trenches with running the ball or stopping it, but on the flip side, like their ability to force turnovers in the back end, and then also, put up big points with Allen and Diggs and Davis and Sanders, like, and Dawson Knox, who's really come up. Like, they have a team that you don't really want to play. And that was a great game. More power to them. For once, I'm really happy Tom Brady won that game, though, because that gave literally my Colts sat idle this week. And in sitting idle this week with the losses of, I believe, the Bengals and the Bills, we slid into 6th in the wild card, and we're officially a wild card team in the week we didn't play. So that was really clutch for us. But again, the AFC wild card picture is wide open. Even the Chargers, they have the first wild card spot locked up, but they play the Chiefs this Thursday. And if they lose that game, the first wild card spot is up for grabs too. So it really just comes down to what happens going forward. Flip side of that, though, is we also had the other NFC AFC matchup with the Niners and the Bengals both competing for wild card spots, and that was a great game.
Yeah, that was probably the game of the week there. That would have been a really impressive win for the Bengals, to be honest, and not like a season saving necessarily, but I mean, if you win that game, then you're feeling a lot more confident, because now they fall to 9, it looks like, right into that jumble, 7-6 jumble, where Denver is still involved, 7-6, and obviously Cleveland now. Yeah, I mean, just a great game overall. I mean, I think we all agree that the Niners are a good team. I'm not sold on them as being like super consistently solid team, but the Bengals being at home gave them an edge. And just a really well played game all around. Brandon Ayuk, I don't know how he turned that corner and dove to that pylon, but that shows the speed that guy has. So tough loss for the Bengals, would have been a really huge win for them. But I don't know. Not too much to fault the Bengals necessarily, other than the fact that maybe a missed opportunity when you get it to overtime there.
The one thing I will say is, if you are playing fantasy football and you got the playoffs coming up, if Elijah Mitchell is not playing, basically start Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and George Kittle, because when Deebo Samuel plays running back for them, George Kittle is the best receiver in the NFL. And then Brandon Ayuk becomes a legit wide receiver too after the beginning of the year, not even like playing, and when he's playing, he's getting 0 receptions. It's such a hilarious concept to me that Kyle Shanahan will just be like, oh, here's another 4 running backs. But if Elijah Mitchell's not playing, I'm just going to take my number 1 wide receiver, who was like 2nd in the league in receptions, and go put him at running back, give him like 8 carries a game and 2 targets. And then I'll just like Garoppolo throw it to George Kittle like 15 times. He'll catch 12 of those catches for like 170 yards and 2 touchdowns. Back-to-back weeks, George Kittle's put up like absurd numbers. And even the week before that, he put up really good ones. And then Ayuk is scoring touchdowns. I mean, it's kind of a beautiful thing to have just an offensive coach that's willing to just mess with things in that way and make everybody find a role and be a part of the success, even when they're dealing with injuries or one guy being in and one guy being out. That's something I'm really impressed with Shanahan with the second half of the season, because I think beginning of the season, he was getting a lot of flack and people were saying, oh, was Shanahan overrated and this and that. And I very much, I've always felt that he's an incredible offensive coach. And I think he's proving that more than ever in the second half. And I mean, I can't disrespect the Bengals for losing the Niners. The dude lost to a good team, but I think that makes us more of a statement for the Niners in the sense of, again, if they make the playoffs, there is nothing about that team that makes me feel like they can't do what they did the year they went to the Super Bowl and almost won the Super Bowl when they lost by 1 possession to the Chiefs. So
yeah, it's starting to look more like their Super Bowl formula. I'm not convinced they have like as well-rounded and overall solid team as they did then, obviously, but kind of the formula they're using, where, like you said, they don't need a ton of guys on offense, but they got some darn good ones that they can just feed the ball and be really creative with how they use them. And they should get Eli back, I would imagine, at some point. But yeah, I don't know. Anything else on the recap before we jump into maybe some picks? Got some big games coming up this weekend.
I just want to give a shout out to Cooper Kupp, because I'm sorry. Every week I watch this guy, and every week I think to myself, okay, this has got to be the game. Like, the first half of this game was when I thought to myself, okay, is this going to be the week that this guy doesn't, put up some absurd numbers? And I'm like, nah, he'll be fine. And then I literally come back. This guy's put up like 35 points in fantasy, over 100 yards receiving, touchdown. It's actually ridiculous as to how good Cooper Kupp is this season. And this is a historic season. And I don't think that, for whatever reason, a lot of people, when we talk about it, but we don't talk about it the way that we did when Randy Moss was having a historic season, or when Harrison was having a historic season, or, Devontae Adams. Like for some reason, I don't feel like Cooper Kupp gets that kind of credit. Maybe it's because he is originally a slot guy, and I don't know. I have no idea, but it's honestly insane as to what he's been able to accomplish this season. And he has not slowed down. He's not skipped a beat. It's wild.
Yeah, well, and you know this, obviously our MDS conglomerate team needed Cooper Kupp to go under 38 points in half PPR to make the playoffs. And I was like, I was never supremely confident in that, knowing what Kupp can do. And he honestly, he had an opportunity to score that touchdown late. Like if he gets that, oh man, it would have been tight. It would have been tight. But yeah, he's amazing. He does it in a different way than like a Randy Moss, right? Randy Moss is very in your face and flashy, like down the field, like mossing people. I mean, heck, it's named after him. And more of that one-on-one. But Cooper Kupp just a little more crafty, It helps that to have McVay as his coach to scheme him open a little bit. But I mean, he's just he's amazing at this point. And shout out those that drafted him in that 4th, 5th middle round there. That league winner type performance, that's for sure, if he keeps it up through the playoffs. But yeah, should we crank out some picks?
First in the regular season, and every single one of those leagues, Cooper Kupp was one of my draft picks. So I think that just goes to the point. Some guys can really just do something in those mid rounds that we can't speak on more than just their performance on the field. So I just want to give him a shout out because I'm riding a high with him, really setting up some teams for success here. So go Cooper Kupp.
Sounds good. Well, let's crank it out here. We do have some pretty significant leagues, or I guess, whatever we want to call it, standings for our picks this week. We've got a new leader. Sai, you've passed Zach by narrow, like 0.4 percentage points, thanks to Zach being idle this week. Didn't even send his picks in remotely. And this was a huge, 12-2 from a favorites perspective. So both of us, I should say, went 12-2, which was in line with a number of favorites that won. But given that's such a big week for you, you narrowly passed Zach by mere percentage points, both at that 63% number, which is about in line with the number of favorites that won. So, although technically the guests are higher than that, but the guests don't pick every week, so if they get an easy week, it bumps up their percentages. But and also disappointingly, we didn't actually put a parlay in this week, but I'm pretty sure we would have hit it right with San Francisco, Seattle, and Green Bay. I think were the 3 that would have settled on. But that's all right. We'll keep grinding away at it. Started off with arguably the biggest game of the week, as first place in the AFC West is on the line. Kansas City going to SoFi Stadium to take on the Chargers in a rematch of a game the Chargers took earlier in the year. Kansas City is favored by 3 points on the road. Over-under is 51.5. Start us off, my friend.
I'll take Kansas City. I think they'll split the series.
Yeah, I think this is a tough game. Chargers have really started picking it up. Keenan Allen should come back after the COVID issues, although now Austin Eckler's hurt. So I'm going to take Kansas City to win and cover as well. Moving on, the Vegas Raiders going to Cleveland on Saturday. We got those Saturday games back, like you mentioned earlier, which is always fun. So Vegas at Cleveland Saturday afternoon. Cleveland's a 3-point favorite at home. That number came down actually from about 5 because of like Jarvis Landry and a bunch of other guys having COVID, although no such concerns for Nick Chubb and Baker, kind of the big names there. I'm still going to say Cleveland wins and covers at home there.
I'll say wins. I think they cover, but this isn't one that I want to bet on just because it's such a
lot of unknown. Yeah. Moving along here to another huge game. New England is coming into Lucas Oil to take on the Colts. Colts obviously in the thick of that kind of wild card hunt now in the 6th spot. New England obviously holding the 1 seed. So I'll start us off, let you go second. Colts are actually 2-point favorites at home. Maybe a bit of a minor surprise here, although they are coming off a bye. Over under is 46. Well, the Patriots are coming off a bye too, but Really tough. You know, the Colts kind of needed a little more just given the wild card situation, but the Patriots still have a ton to play for. So tough, but I am going to take New England to go on the road and win this one.
Yeah, I mean, both our teams do play a very similar style too. I mean, it's run the football, play great defense, and then try not to make our quarterbacks do too much. I'm going to take my Colts though because it's at home, and I think these are very even teams. Obviously, New England with a little bit of a leg up in the sense of how they perform in the AFC, but I really do think my Colts need this one way more, and I think for that reason we'll hopefully put up a great performance at home.
It is interesting. Vegas does more or less agree with you that the teams are even. So, yeah, well, we'll move along here. Arizona going to Detroit, first 1 o'clock game of the Sunday slate. Arizona's 13.5-point favorites. Over under is 47.5. I'll say Arizona wins and covers.
I'll take them to win. I'm not going to confidently say cover because it just seemed like a team that's, still trying to find it again after guys come back from injuries. They've still been good, but not the Arizona early in the year. So I'm going to take Arizona win, but not to cover.
All right. Move on to 1 o'clock. We got the Panthers going to the Buffalo Bills in Orchard Park at 1 o'clock Sunday afternoon. Buffalo's a 10-point favorite at home. Over under is 43.5. I guess if they said if it's Cam or PJ Walker, obviously Cam got benched last week, but I'd imagine they go back to PJ this week. I don't know if they've said. Do we know?
No idea.
All right, I'm gonna take Bills to win and cover. I think the Bills might start getting it rolling here after that late comeback against Tampa Bay, and obviously they're in desperation mode at this point. So
I think they'll cover, but I'm not super comfortable with them covering. I'll take them to win for sure, though.
Sounds good. Washington, another big game here going to Philly. 1 o'clock. Lincoln Financial. Philly is a 4.5-point favorite. Over under is 44.5. Obviously, this is another game with tons of COVID concerns, specifically on the defensive side for Washington. Taylor Heineke left the game against Dallas, but should be fine to play. And then Terry McLaurin is probably the biggest name on that list of guys we don't know who's going to play. I'd say it's probably doubtful given the concussion situation. J.D. McKissick's another huge name that they didn't have against Dallas that hopefully will come back. So much up in the air, given, although Hurts also, you don't know if Hurts is going to play. So lots of injuries up in the air. I just think we're too decimated right now. It's so hard to go on the road and beat Philly. Coming off a bye week, they're going to be fresh. So I keep going first on accident, but I'll say Philly wins and covers.
I think Philly wins and covers too.
All right, I'm finally going to remember to make you go first here. Dallas, coming off that big win and more or less kind of solidifying their spot at the top of the division. Going to MetLife to take on the Giants. 1 p.m. start. Dallas is a 10.5-point favorite. Over under is 44.5. Who do you got?
I'm never going to take somebody to cover over 10.5 in the NFC East, but I'll take Dallas to win that game.
Yeah, I have the Giants covering that number, but certainly Dallas winning. Houston at Jacksonville, 1 p.m. Jacksonville is just an absolute mess right now. I mean, I don't know what's going on there, but it is not good. Some of the reports, whether, some of them certainly are probably just rumors, but just a mess. But Jacksonville finds themselves a 3-point favorite against a similarly bottom-dwelling Houston team that has now turned to Davis Mills. Over-under is a minuscule 39.5. Sai.
I just got to ask you this question real quick. I know we're making picks, but did you hear the report that Houston might, if Davis Mills finishes the season well, that they might draft a defensive player in the draft and just roll with Davis Mills for the next season?
I actually don't think Davis Mills looks that horribly. I mean, again, he's playing on the Texans here. You knew he had a little bit of development to work on. I don't think it's going that bad for Davis Mills.
Yeah, but you got to capitalize on your opportunities to pick quarterback. Anyway, that's a conversation.
Well, this quarterback draft is horrible, though. Who would you actually pick in the top 5 at quarterback this year? Which is an interesting question if you have an answer. I
would just trade down and draft him later. But I'll go ahead and go with Jacksonville just because I think they have a little more talent. I mean, this is actually one of the harder games to pick on the slate because both teams could very well let you down. So
yeah, I'll pick Houston. No reason in particular. Jets, Miami, 1 o'clock. Miami 8.5-point favorite. Over under is 42. Say Miami wins but does not cover.
Yeah, I'll say win, no cover. Although, you know what? I'll take win and cover because Elijah Moore's out. And they might get Michael Carter back, but I
Yeah,
felt like Elijah Moore's been such a focal point of their offense. For him
sure.
not going to
The Dolphins have huge running back COVID concerns. All of their running backs got COVID. Not that it really matters, but Tennessee, kind of a tricky game here, going to Pittsburgh in Heinz Field. 1 o'clock start. Tennessee's a 1.5 point favorite on the road. Over under is 41.5. This is a tough game, but to pick. Who do you got?
All bias aside, I'm going to take Pittsburgh. I think the way they finish off the second half with the Vikings going to give them a little momentum coming into this one. They have more to play for because they need to win to secure a playoff spot. And also, I just find that, obviously the winning against, they won 20-0, so that's good for Tennessee, but they have not been very good against good teams since all the injury that they've had. So I find Pittsburgh is going to pull this one out.
Yeah, I don't think Pittsburgh's a particularly good team, though. You make some good points, though. You tempt me, but I'm going to stick with Tennessee winning cover. Atlanta, not playing bad. I mean, they beat Carolina. Carolina's Carolina, and Cam looked awful. But Atlanta, I mean, if Atlanta actually wants to make the playoffs, they've got a decent opportunity here to go on the road and beat San Francisco. 4 o'clock start. San Francisco is a 9-point favorite at home now. Over under is 46. No, I say San Francisco wins. I'll say Atlanta covers, but I think San Francisco gets it done, no problem.
Oh boy, we're gonna have a tough time picking spreads this week, man, because I got San Francisco winning and covering.
We'll figure it out as always. Another 4 o'clock start. Pretty big game here when you look at almost similar to Atlanta. I'm not sure anyone's actually giving Denver a chance, but they very much, by the looks of the records, have an opportunity here. So
well, you say that, but they're projected to win this game. So
right, exactly. So Cincinnati coming into Mile High for a 4 o'clock kick. Denver's a 1.5 point favorite. Over under is 43.5. Big one here. Who do you got?
Cincinnati. Not because Denver isn't. I think Denver's better than people give them credit for being. I don't want to take that away from them, but I do think Cincinnati, after last week having a really close game with the Bengals, will bounce back and win this one.
You know what? I had Cincinnati. I'm going to flip. Denver's just been running the ball so well. So I'm going to give them a win at home here. Seattle going to SoFi to take on the Rams. Rams are 4.5 point favorites, which I imagine is COVID related because I think the line probably started a decent bit higher. Over under is 45.5. I'll say Rams win and cover.
Yeah, I'm torn on this. I mean, I think they'll win and cover too. I Russell Wilson's been playing so much better, but at the same time, I still think they'll win and cover.
Yeah, I mean, what are the big, like, Beckham seemed like the big one, but who else? And the main players are still fine from a COVID perspective.
Darrell Henderson hopefully comes back. He was
right. They could even be getting more healthy. So I was kind of surprised the line dipped so much. I think it dipped to.
Well, you got to also consider the Seahawks beat the 49ers.
Yeah, they're not bad.
But. I mean, obviously it's Houston, but they won big. So Seahawks are, I think people feel the Seahawks are bouncing back too. So.
Yeah, Rashad Penny. Check out your waiver wires if you need a running back in fantasy. So, Green Bay at Baltimore, 4 o'clock. Green Bay's 5-point favorite, 43.5 the over under. Looks like Lamar is, what are we saying, more doubtful than questionable, but a true questionable maybe. I don't know. I actually don't know.
I feel like this is my lock of the week, because
Green Bay.
The concerns. Well, actually, the other concern though is there is a chance Aaron Rodgers doesn't play. Very minimal, but there is a chance they might just have surgery on his toe this week and have him miss this upcoming week. That's not a guarantee. But if Rodgers is playing, there's no way I'm not picking Green Bay to win and cover, because even if Lamar is healthy, I find that the Packers have just been playing at a level that's so impressive. I think they can win by a touchdown.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a little confused by the number given Lamar's status. Although Huntley can move the ball a little bit, but I do like the 43.5 is pretty low as well. If Aaron's playing, he can almost do that on his own against a beat up Baltimore secondary. So, all right, Sunday Night Football, New Orleans and Tampa Bay, always a good game. New Orleans kind of has Tampa Bay's number, specifically Tom's number. Tampa Bay's an 11-point favorite though. Over under is 47. I have Tampa Bay winning, but not covering.
This feels very disrespectful to New Orleans to say that Tampa Bay is going to beat them by 11. Like, I understand the team's different than when they beat Tampa Bay earlier in the year, but it's the same coach and the same running back and same defensive players that beat Tampa Bay earlier in their year. I do think Tampa Bay will win, but I don't think New Orleans is going to lose by 11. That seems disrespectful.
Yeah. Alvin Kamara's back, makes a big difference. All right, Monday Night Football, Minnesota at Chicago. Minnesota's a 3.5-point favorite on the road. Over/under's 44. Justin Fields kind of has some injuries, but I think he's fine. I don't think there's any concern he's not going to play. It's non-throwing hand stuff, among other things. So big game for the Vikings. It's a tough divisional game, but they need every win they can get to make sure they hold on to a potential playoff spot. So who do you got?
Okay, first and foremost, why do they keep giving us this division's games as primetime games? Especially like did they think Chicago was going to be good? They just gave Chicago back-to-back weeks of Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football. I guess their fan base is loyal. I won't disrespect them, but come on, bro, this is ridiculous. Actually, this is one of my picks of the week. I'm going to take Minnesota to cover this one.
Oh, interesting. I'm going to disagree. I'm going to take Chicago on the money line.
Wow.
I think this is a bit of a choke spot for Kirk. I think it goes high scoring here. That might be biased, but
dude, really after what Dalvin Cook did last week, you don't think they're just gonna completely take over this game? I
don't. On the road, could be a cold weather game. Kirk Cousins on Monday Night Football. Give me Chicago for a money line spot. That's all she wrote. Should be fun. We got some good games on the card this week. Some big divisional games, some big, conference games, and we'll see what happens.
It was about time I pulled the pass on Zebo. It was only a matter of time.
Hey, man, that's what you get for, missing a week of picks. Even if you can't join the pod, you got to send them in.
Hey, man, I felt good about my momentum nonetheless. I think every week
you were
a few games. So
sweet.